Everybody's talking about mindful eating. Sabi nila, nakatulong sa pag-lose ng weight. Sabi nila, nakatulong sa relasyon nila sa pagkain. Is mindful eating sitting down, looking at your food, and eating it very, very slowly? Or is there more to it? Well, my name is Sebastian, and I'm a registered nutritionist and dietitian, and this is the Donut Box, where we unbox stories and talk about things we usually do not talk about. Today, let's talk about mindful eating. So if you're ready, let's unbox this story. The Donut Box. The Donut Box. Welcome back to another episode. I am a big advocate of mindful eating, so I'm very, very excited for this topic. If you've watched any of my videos, my shorts, or my YouTube videos, or even some of my podcasts, sometimes you'll hear me say things like, it's okay to honor your cravings, we just have to do so mindfully. Or things like, kumain tayo, pero dapat mindful tayo. But I guess I've never really done a sit-down episode or a sit-down conversation kung saan yun lang yung pag-uusapan natin. Because I understand that there is a lot of miscommunication and misinformation about what mindful eating is. Some people see it as a weight loss strategy or a weight loss diet, while other people use it as a way to villainize food as well. They're like, you have to be mindful, so don't eat bad food. Things like that. So I want to talk a little bit more about how we can eat more mindfully and how we can apply these tips to hopefully create a better relationship with food. In our current structure around food, there is a lot of noise. There's a lot of food noise and a lot of noise in general. Dahil na rin to sa kultura natin na nagmamadali, very hustle culture. The thought of putting your work and productivity over your health is a very big message that looms around most of our decisions. For example, food becomes a secondary activity rather than a primary activity. Pag nag-work ka, iniisip mo, ay, sayang naman sa oras kung kakain ako, ay di kakain na lang ako habang nagtatrabaho ako. So what happens is you disconnect from your hunger and fullness cues. You start to not notice when you're full until you're super duper full. O nalilipasan ka na ng gutom, kaya sobrang nagugutom ka na hanggang umabot ka na naman ng sobrang busog ka. There's a lot of disconnect when it comes to our body and our relationship with food, and mindful eating is a step to help us get there. Now, mindful eating has its roots in Buddhist practices. Kasi syempre, kilala naman natin ang mga Buddhist or Buddhism as about being mindful and being present. And a lot of the things that they practice and they talk about carried over to mindful eating, which was actually popularized in the 1990s up to the present, especially with dietitians and psychologists. The goal of mindful eating is really to allow us to be present in the experience of eating so that we are not always overeating and we can listen to our cues much better. Madalas kasi yung problema natin sa pag-overeat or our inability to control our cravings really comes from the lack of trust. At para magkaroon tayo ng tiwala sa sarili natin habang kumakain, we have to understand what we go through in the experience of eating, and mindful eating will help us with that. So is mindful eating just about slowing down, just about having no distractions, or is there more that we can apply and learn? Well, I did ask you to give me some of your mindful eating questions and experiences. I put a question box on my Instagram at itsjosebastian. Follow if you like. So I want to unbox those and give some answers. I've got my donut box, so let's unbox. We have our crochet donut. It's so cute. The first one here that somebody mentioned, how can I deal with cravings, especially when I'm busy or feeling stressed? Okay, this is a very, very good question. Before we answer this question, I want to introduce you to the topic of different types of hungers. Yes, iba-iba pala ang gutom at ang ibig sabihin niya. See, most of the time we think of hunger as just, well, kailangan ko ng pagkain, kakain ako. And yes, that's true. But what if I told you there's actually different types of hungers as well? Specifically, there are 4. There is physical hunger, mouth-taste hunger, practical hunger, and you have your emotional hunger. Simulan natin sa physical hunger. Physical hunger is the physical hunger or biological hunger we feel when we need fuel. Kung wari kotse ka, kulang ka na sa gas, o kaya cellphone ka na wala ka ng battery, that is our physical hunger. Basically, it's your body telling you that yes, kailangan mo na kumain. Literally. And we feel this in many different parts of our bodies and in many different ways. Kung wari naghihina ka na, wala ka ng enerhiya, baka nararamdaman mo sa tiyan mo, medyo sinisikmura ka na. Or maybe you're starting to think of food and you're being more distracted. And maybe even in the mood, you're feeling irritable, hangry. Those are usually signs of physical hunger. At syempre, ang kailangan mo para isagot yung physical hunger na yon ay kumain. Next, you have your mouth-taste hunger, which is your cravings. Essentially, your mouth is looking for a specific taste or specific texture. So this is when you're craving something sweet or something salty or maybe something spicy. I never crave something spicy. Hindi ko kaya. Hindi kaya ng tiyan ko yun. But essentially, these are our cravings. And usually, the best way to satisfy your cravings is, of course, to eat what you're craving, so that you can move on. Now, a lot of people are a bit skeptical about this because sometimes they do answer their cravings, but they don't actually end up moving on. They just give in more to everything else around them. And one of the first steps to, of course, answering your cravings is being able to separate the good and bad mentality around food as well. We'll tackle that a little bit more later. But now let's go to practical hunger. Practical hunger is when you eat not necessarily because you feel those physical signs of hunger, but because you want to eat out of practicality. And some examples of this are, ay, may meeting ako mamaya, sobrang busy namin, pero hindi ako makakain ng lunch, so I will have a bigger breakfast now para hindi ako masyadong magutom mamaya. Or something like, hala, nasa traffic ako, mga 2 hours pa to bago ako makapag-dinner. Sige, magsa-snack ako ngayon para hindi ako masyadong magutom mamaya. Or another example would be if you don't know what hunger feels like yet because you are currently working on your relationship with food in your body at nahihirapan tayo minsan malaman kung ano ba talaga yung gutom. And sometimes you always feel hungry. Sometimes you never feel hungry. So practical hunger is eating before you get hungry. Not because you're a glutton or because you have no control, but it's because of practicality. It's because the hungrier you are, the more full you get. And sometimes your cues are just not there yet. So practical hunger is eating in a response to anticipated physical hunger that you won't get to satisfy or that you won't feel. Tapos, meron naman tayong emotional hunger. Si emotional hunger naman, yung kumakain tayo kasi maraming feelings or emotions na masyadong malakas, masyadong nagbe-build up. When you're stressed, when you're sad, and even when you're bored. These are usually types of emotional hunger that we usually satisfy with emotional eating. Now, I do have a few episodes that tackle a little bit more about emotional eating and how it's not bad. We just have to understand how to use it more effectively. Because I don't think emotional eating is bad, especially if it's your way to cope. That's perfectly fine. Our big issue is the fact that it becomes our only coping mechanism to the point na hindi na siya effective kasi ginagamit na lang natin siya para i-numb yung feelings natin. Yung kain ka na lang ng kain hanggang hindi ka na stressed kasi hindi mo na nararamdaman yung stress mo. Pero bukas mo stress ka na ulit kasi hindi mo naman sinagot yung problema. Tinakpan mo lang ng pagkain. But sometimes we also don't use emotional eating effectively because we feel guilt that we reach for food. Kaya ano nangyayari? Stressed ka, kumain ka, mas na-stress ka pa dahil kumain ka na naman ulit ng mas madami. And that's why it's so important for us to have the permission aspect when it comes to eating, when it comes to cravings, and when it comes to emotions. Kung wala ka pang permisyo para kumain, hindi mo binibigay yun sa sarili mo, there's always gonna be tension. There's always gonna be something that holds you back and makes those feelings around food more intense. So I wanted to tackle or discuss those different types of hunger because the way you satisfy it matters. Kung wari, meron kang craving para sa cookie, tapos naisip mo, hindi, masama yung cookie eh. Bawal ko yan kainin. Craving lang yan, di naman kailangan sagutin lahat ng craving. Kakain lang ako ng ng mansanas. Magmamansanas na lang ako. Tapos kumain ka ng mansanas. Sarap. After you finish the apple, you're like, parang gusto ko pa rin ng cookie. Sige, alam ko na. Almonds. Sabi nila pag nagka-crave ka ng cookie, mag-almonds ka na lang. Kain ako ng almonds. So there, you're munching on your almonds and then you're like, no, I still want the cookie. Aha! Chocolate. Kung kumain ako ng dark chocolate, mawawala na yung cravings ko sa cookie. Kain ka ng cookie. Ay, kain ka ng dark chocolate. Hindi pa rin eh. Baka gusto ko na ng maalat. Mag-chips na lang ako. And then at the end of the day, you eat the cookie anyways. But instead of feeling satisfied, you just feel very full and you feel guilt. So when it comes to like a mouth taste craving or your craving, usually the best way to satisfy it would be to eat what you're craving and move on. Because it intensifies, it builds up, and then it becomes more of a big deal than it should be or has to be. Food doesn't have to be the center of our universe or the center of our world, but our relationship with food makes it so that it is. I used to think about food so much. Like every single moment of the day, I'm thinking about when I can eat, what I can eat, how much I can eat. And I honestly felt like nobody understood me. Nobody got it because everyone seemed like they were just fine. They didn't seem like they were struggling with food at all. They didn't seem like they were stressing over the fact that they wanted another cup of rice when they already had a whole cup. They didn't seem like they were thinking about dessert or contemplating the other slice of pizza because they feel like they've already ruined their diet. Parang hindi ko nakikita na nararamdaman yun ng mga ibang tao. Feeling ko ako lang. But later on, I realized that actually a lot of people are struggling with that more than we know. Specifically, my sister in my own household was dealing with that as well. And I thought that it was just me being weak and me lacking willpower. But later on, I realized that it was actually my relationship with food. Masama talaga yung relasyon ko sa pagkain na pinapayagan ko na yung pagkain na magkokontrol ng buhay ko. And the biggest reason for that was because I didn't give myself permission and I wasn't kind to myself. You know, that's all of the things that we talk about regularly in our videos and our content. That's such a big part of being able to understand your body is also understanding the different types of hunger that you feel so you know how to best satisfy them. If you feel physical hunger, syempre, kakain ka para hindi ka nagutom. If you feel your mouth taste craving, well, then you have to eat what you're craving so that you can move on. Of course, there are caveats to that, specifically with things like impulsive cravings or things like delayed gratification that happens as well with cravings. But in the general sense, usually the best way to satisfy a mouth taste craving would be to eat it so that you can move on. It doesn't have to be right away, but pushing back those cravings for a day that turns into weeks or maybe even months might intensify it to the point that you over binge it when you actually allow yourself to have it. And then, of course, you have your practical hunger, which can come into your habits and your routines, and emotional hunger, which we tackled in other episodes before. It's about having a balance of different types of coping mechanisms. Now, the question here was, how do I deal with cravings, especially when I'm busy or feeling stressed? Well, it's very important now for us to understand, what are you really feeling? Is it actually a craving for something specific, or is it that emotional hunger, that emotional eating feeling? Why does this matter? Because if it was just, let's say, just a craving, gusto ko lang kasi ng chips eh, so kumain ako ng chips. Well, eat your chips and move on. Cravings are not bad, okay? Cravings tell us a little bit of something. Cravings can tell you maybe you're lacking certain nutrients in your meals, or maybe you just want some comfort. Cravings tell you that you need something, and we answer it. Now, when it comes to emotional eating, where you're not eating just because of a craving, you're eating because there is an emotional tension that's building up. Now, that would be a bit of a different solution. In this question, I feel like there's some underlying thing that's being asked, which is, okay lang ba talaga na i-satisfy ko yung cravings ko in the first place? Diba? Kasi yun naman talaga yung minsan na kini-question natin eh. Can I really satisfy my cravings? Because it just feels wrong. Well, it goes back into the mindset that first, there is no such thing as good or bad food. And whenever I say this, I get tons of people being like, ano ka ba, dietitian ka ba? Sabi mo walang good or bad food. I don't know where that voice came from. But most of the time when I say that, people tend to argue with me and say that it's a bad mindset. But really, kapag ka sinabi mong bad yon o good yon, binibigyan mo siya ng power. And that power controls you. Because every time you eat a quote-unquote bad food, you feel terrible. But every time you eat a good food, you feel high on a pedestal, you feel better than all of the other people in the world. Diba meron talaga siyang binibigay sa atin na parang moral value. And there's no moral value to food. Food is food. And food is allowed to give you energy. It's allowed to give you comfort. It's allowed to give you happiness. It's allowed to give you peace. The problem, again, lies in when it's our only coping mechanism or it's the only thing we turn to. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that there is no such thing as good or bad food, because when you put moral value, you internalize this moral value and it takes over. It takes over you listening to your body, and it takes over you being able to be mindful. So the first thing we have to tackle is give yourself that permission. Okay lang kumain ng cravings mo kapag kailangan mo. Of course, we want to be balanced as well in our meals throughout the day. We also want to be consistent with our meal pattern as well. So identify first, is it a craving or is it emotional eating? How do I know? Diba yun yung tanong naman na, okay, magkaiba pala yun, pero paano ko malalaman kung ano ba yung pinagkaiba nun? Well, emotional eating tends to be this wave of emotion. It comes with this feeling, diba? May kasama siyang pakiramdam, whether stress, sad, or anything else, diba? May kasama siya. There's this heavy emotion. It's a wave. It's sudden. You are craving for something, but you also are not sure what it is, and it's hard to satisfy. Versus a mouth-based craving, which can just come on a whim. It can come for different reasons, but it doesn't always have this heavy, intense emotion alongside it. And most of the time, to answer that craving would just be to eat what you're craving and move on, like nasatisfy na siya. Pero pag emotional eating, madalas, kahit na kinain mo na yung iniisip mong kine-crave mo na, gusto ko ng donut, parang hindi pa rin yun yung sagot eh. Parang hindi mo pa rin nakuha yung hinahanap mo. That's something that can tell us that, okay, this is not just a craving. This is emotional hunger. And there's actually more that I need to do in order to address it. When it comes to emotional eating, we focus on understanding three things. Number one, the main emotion that you're feeling while you're looking for food. Madalas maghahanap ako ng pagkain kapag pakiramdam ko mag-isa lang ako sa mundo. Drama naman pagkasabi ng lonely. When I feel lonely, that is usually when I have my emotional eating episodes. Because of course, well, I want to have a companion, right? So number one is what is it that you're feeling? Number two, what is it that you want? So what I'm feeling is lonely. What I want is a companion. And usually what is that companion that I look to? It's food. Food feels like that companion. Food feels like a hug. Food feels like a friend. Food feels like something that's not going to fail me, not going to leave me, not going to disappoint me, unless it tastes bad. I mean, sometimes it tastes bad. But anyways, food is the constant that I'm looking for, the companion that I wanted. So number 3 is to ask yourself, are there other things that can give me what I'm looking for? Kung naghahanap ako ng companion, ano pa kaya yung pwede kong hanapin? Oh, I know. My puppy, my poodle, Wilson. I can bond with her, or I can listen to a song that I love, or I can watch an episode that is like my comfort episode or something like that. That is something I can do. And that's usually what we call your emotional toolbox. And it's something I work on with my clients in my program. trying to find an emotional toolbox that helps you identify other ways to release the emotions you're feeling para hindi puro pagkain ang pinupuntahan natin. But food is also okay as a coping mechanism. It's just that we have to make sure it's not our only coping mechanism. At mas importante, kailangan din natin malaman kung paano siya gagamitin. In the sense, you have to let food give you what you're looking for. You have to let food be your comfort. Let food be your happiness and your joy. And let it do that without guilt attached. I think that's the biggest struggle when it comes to emotional eating is guilt is always attached to it. Stressed ako kaya kumain ako. Sama ko naman. Bakit ako kumain? So there's always just this guilt alongside it. And that guilt eats up anything that we're feeling, making it so hard to be able to connect with our body. It makes it hard to be mindful. With the question that was asked, how do I deal with my cravings, especially when I'm feeling busy or stressed? Like we mentioned, understand first what is the hunger that you're truly feeling. And then, like we discussed, identify what you're looking for or what that craving is so that you're able to move on. Okay, I feel like I used up all of our time just to talk about that one question. But it was a really good question in allowing us to open up the conversation of the different types of hungers, which is very important when it comes to mindful eating. So I'll do another one here. How do I stop myself from feeling guilty for not finishing my food because my body said I'm full? Like we mentioned, mindful eating's goal is for you to be present in the experience of eating. Present and knowing the textures, the tastes, and the flavors para masatisfy mo talaga yung sarili mo. Because there's usually two types of satisfaction you're looking for in your meal. Number one is physical, yung nabusog ka. And number two is mental, yung nasarapan ka. Kasi mapapansin mo kapag nabusog ka nga pero hindi masarap yung pagkain, kakain ka pa. Kapag masarap yung pagkain pero hindi ka nabusog, kakain ka pa. So you want to find the balance of both usually. Na as a Filipino, ang pinakamalaking nakaka-apekto sa ating mindful eating ay yung mga practices natin bilang Pilipino. Number one practice is when you were younger, you probably couldn't leave the table unless you were super duper full. Diba kasi sinasabi, sayang naman yung mga bata sa Africa, hindi nakakain. Yung mga ganon, mga tao hindi nakakain. So ikaw nasasayang mo lang yung pagkain sa plato mo. When you feel guilt for leaving food on the table because you feel like you've wasted it, you're probably going to overeat a lot. I get it. Another tendency is to eat fast because if you don't eat fast, you don't get to eat. Ganon yun sa bahay ko minsan. Or depende sa pagkain. But my dad has a tendency to eat fast and graze. My dad is a grazer where he will snack, eat here and there. And most of the time you're planning to eat something and then you go to the ref and like, oh, okay, it's gone. And probably my fault because you don't label it or anything like that. Then the scarcity mindset builds. Kasi naiisip mo maubusan ka palagi, diba? So I think it's very important first to understand that your environment plays a very important role. So we have to take a look at what pressures might be playing or putting in place that scarcity mindset around us. You have to remember, it is not a waste of food if you're already full. Kasi mas sayang lang din naman yung pagkain kung kakainin mo nang sobrang busog ka na. Because then the trash can isn't a physical trash can. The trash can is you. Pinipilit mo na lang sarili mo, ubusin yung pagkain na sobrang busog ka na. And that's not what you are. Now, I know that there is guilt attached to not finishing the food, but here is something that maybe we can take along with us. Take note of the amount of food that made you feel full or made you feel comfortable and use that experience instead the next time. So that way it's not a waste, it's a learning experience and it won't happen, or as much as possible, hindi natin papaulitin yun. Kung wari, nag-uwi ka ng spaghetti, may isang container, nilagay mo lahat sa plato mo, tapos nakakalahati ka lang. Tapos pipilitin mo yung isang kalahati kasi pakiramdam mo sayang, di ba? Parang, pag hindi ko inubos yun, sayang yung mga hindi nakakain. Tapos ako nagsasayang lang ng pagkain. I mean, if you can put it as leftovers and put it in the ref, then that would be great. But if you can't, take note of how much you ate and how much made you full para sa susunod, siguro kalahati muna yung ilalagay ko sa plato ko. Mamaya na yung susunod na kalahati. Pagka naramdaman kong gutom pa ako. Treat it or use it as a learning experience. Because force-feeding yourself is not going to make you a more mindful eater. It's just going to create more habits of overstuffing yourself. Because that is what you get used to. And if possible, maybe start with half of that meal first before you add the other half at the beginning already so you can really gauge it better. Yun talaga yung napaka-importante. Because again, you are not a trash can. At mas sayang lang naman talaga yung pagkain kapag ka pinilit mong ubusin. It's hard to pay attention to the food when one has turned into an iPad baby. Lol. Oh my gosh, same. I think we are just screen babies, basically. Hindi na talaga ako mabuhay na walang screen sa harapan ko. Even if I'm just walking on the toilet, if I'm cooking, I need to be like hearing something or seeing something. I don't know what this short attention span is that's happening, and I don't know how we're gonna fix it. But I'll share with you some common mindful eating practices anyways. Now, the truth is, there's nothing inherently wrong about watching something or scrolling online when you're eating. Kasi para sa iba, nakakatulong nga eh. Sa iba, mas bumabagal sila kumain, mas na-enjoy nila yung experience. I think especially if you're the type of person who eats alone as well. That's actually why mukbang videos started in the first place. Alam mo yung mga mukbang na Asian people would be like eating their food at home. That's how it started. But now it became mukbang as in like food challenge where people are eating as much as they can in front of the screen, which is a whole other thing. But mukbangs were created mainly for those who might feel alone while they're eating, so they watch other people eat, and I think that was really nice. Some people watch something and they feel more at peace, they feel more connected with their body, and you know what? That is okay. For me, most of the time, that also happens. Because if I am not watching something, parang nagmamadali ako kasi nabobore ako. You know what I'm saying? But I will suggest that at least one meal, either in your week or in your day, that you do your best to take away the screen because you have to learn your signals first. Eating distractedly or eating while something is happening is okay if you already understand your cues. Because if you don't, madalas mapapa-overeat ka talaga. Like when you're watching a show, kumain ka ng popcorn, distracted ka, hindi mo alam kung ano yung pakiramdam ng busog, pagtingin mo na, ay, ubos na yung popcorn ko, pero gusto ko pa. These are the things you want to avoid. Distraction from your body. What does fullness feel like? Hunger usually feels like you're starting to think of food. Fullness is the opposite. Paunti-unti kang nag-iisip ng ibang bagay. Masarap pa rin yung pagkain, pero hindi ka na masyadong nag-iisip ng pagkain, nag-iisip ka na ng ibang mga bagay. That is showing you that you're slowly getting full. The same way that the bites of food are no longer as exciting or enticing as the first bite. Those are your body's progressive ways of telling you that you're full, pero madalas, hindi nga natin napapakinggan o hindi natin alam kasi nga, distracted tayo. So I want you to try at least having one meal in your day or one snack or one meal in your week where you try to really just focus on listening on those cues, taking each bite and trying to really understand what fullness feels like. Some people take mindful eating practice along their journey while they eat, which is journaling. So for example, bago ka kumain, sulat mo ano yung mga kulay ng pagkain, ano yung naaamoy mo, ano yung mga textures. And then take notes of how you feel each bite. You can do this, of course, mentally or you can physically write it. It really depends on you, but I would suggest to try one or the other, at least both once, just so that you can see how it feels. Pwede ka na manood ng movie habang kumakain ka kasi nararamdaman mo na siya. But of course, that takes time. It doesn't happen with just one meal. Okay na ako. Alam ko na, napapakinggan ko na. It takes time. Even for me, while I feel like most of the time I've got it, sometimes that connection just separates and I have to like rebuild. Another thing you can do is take breaks while you eat. And no, I don't mean leave the table and come back later, time in, time out. I mean, ibaba mo yung mga kubiertos mo. Maybe if you're holding like a sandwich or a burger, put it down after each bite and just try to remind yourself that you're trying to take your time. Because it takes at least 20 minutes for your body to know that it's full. So I'd like you to at least try and give yourself that allotted time before you get seconds. Isa pang pwede natin gawin ay syempre tignan mo kung saan ka pa distracted sa buhay mo, at paano mo yun dinadala sa pagkain. Like I said, I'm distracted every time, everywhere, all the days. I'm like watching something 24/7 when I'm cooking and all that. It's only when I'm vlogging that I am not watching something, because I have to have like audio. The audio has to be good and stuff like that. So honestly, vlogging maybe saved my life or something. I don't know. Something like that. But I want you to really see what other places and what other times you tend to multitask or you find yourself distracted, because you might be taking those behaviors as well while you're eating. Well, that is all the time we have for those questions today, and there were quite a few. But if you do have more questions or experiences around mindful eating, we can definitely do a part 2 of this episode. Just leave them in the comments below. Mindful eating is, yes, being present in the experience of eating. But it's beyond just listening to your body. It's also understanding what your body is trying to tell you. And it doesn't just happen by eating slowly or even staring at your food. It also goes into understanding or knowing what different things might feel like or what you're looking for. At sana nakatulong man yung episode na ito para mabigyan pa tayo ng mga idea. Outfit check! So this jacket over here is actually from my sister. So I don't quite remember where she got it. I think it was Shopee, and I'll try to link it, but from what I know, it's not available anymore. The top here is also from Shopee, but this one I can link below, so I will do that. We have here my ring stack, which I love, especially this egg ring, but I forgot the artist who made it. But I will try to leave it in the description. My necklace is from Sky and Loon Shop. It is the tennis racket engraving, which I had personalized. You can also customize your own engravings as well. And of course, we have the Craftolio donut earrings, the signature, the donut box earrings. And my hat is from Nike. If you like this episode, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and give it a thumbs up wherever you're listening. And don't forget to follow me at itsjosebastian on any platform that, well, you can find me, and that's pretty much all the platforms. At i-follow niyo rin at the Donut Box Pod so that you can be part of the next podcasts. Until the next episode, you already know, you always deserve to eat. So let's do so mindfully. Thanks for listening to the pod. This is the Donut Box.